Aloha and welcome to Permission to Flourish, a podcast about choosing growth, joy, and purpose on your own terms. I'm your host, Jay Cornell, and I sit down with leaders, creatives, and everyday visionaries who's given themselves permission to pause, pivot, and pursue what truly matters. These conversations are real, heartfelt, and here to remind you, you don't need permission. Let's get to today's episode. So today we are here with my amazing good friend and one of my coaches, Chad Carpenter. Chad, thank you so much for saying yes and stepping into everything regarding permission to flourish. I'm so excited to have you as my guest.
My
Chad,
pleasure.
before we get started, could you just share a little bit about yourself, especially for people that don't know who you are and what you do? Like I have the privilege of knowing all the wonderful things you do.
Nice, yeah. So I'm a Southern Floridian, born and raised. Grew up in the construction industry. Struggled with a lot of problems with being in an environment that wasn't, conducive to honest and authentic expression, where dissociation was more so the norm. So kind of developed habits of isolation, coping with substances and stuff from a very young age. And then by divine intervention, had three ACL replacements, which is the main ligament in your knee, for those that don't know, at a very young age. So I had my third one when I was 20 in a really bad place physically. So I was basically at a crossroad, either just medicate for the rest of my life, which I had already gone down that road recreationally and, decided I'm not doing that, or do something proactive and basically research and discovered yoga. Pretty much instantly changed my life, started diving more into meditation as well, which those two practices for 2 or 3 years just completely turned my life around. Without those, I don't know, where they would be. And then started teaching those, naturally wanting to share with more people, kind of wanting at the same time to find a deeper way to support people, like a deeper mechanism, if you will, to give people more of a transformational experience. With that kind of manifested coming across somatic breathwork, which is the trauma release breathwork like we've done together, which is a beautifully healing modality. And that's pretty much my life's work at this point over the last 5 or 6 years. So that's kind of everything that's brought me here in a nutshell.
Yeah, and it's such powerful work that you do, especially when you do the breath work. So yeah, totally
Thank you.
enjoy it.
There's nothing else I'd rather do, truly.
I love that. And yes, I need to make it out to Florida so I can like do it in person because
Yeah.
nothing much more amazing than doing it in person.
Yes, for sure.
When you know, because this is all about permission to flourish, right? This is the podcast. When you hear
Hmm.
that those words or just the phrase, what does it personally mean to you at this stage in your life?
Yeah, that's powerful. That's actually a very powerful thing for me because, I grew up in a very performative based environment where, everything was based off of how you produced, either on the ball field in sports or in the schoolroom, classroom, and then eventually in business. And that was that's what determined your value, your worth, even your how worthy you were of being loved, and really I literally unconsciously believe that. And I was in my mid 20s, if you will, working in my family's construction business and just feeling stuck and literally obligated to stay there for my family, and was, giving up chasing my dreams, if you will. Obviously, dealing with a lot of programming and conditioning. So, lived for a long time where I didn't feel like I had permission to, step into a life that was authentic and that actually brought me fulfillment, right? And just over time, through these modalities that I practice, these internalization modalities, start to peel back a lot of those layers and realize, I don't have to do this for anyone. At the end of the day, my family will want for me what I want for me, right? So I think a lot of people feel maybe not through necessarily through their family's business, but feel obligated to show up in a specific way based off of their conditioning, their programming, and the way that everyone else shows up around them. I mean, I can even say I was a true people pleaser, right? I was a yes man first 2.5 decades of my life, even if it was something like a friend asking me to come over to hang out and have a couple beers. Like I literally could not say no, right? So for me, permission to say no is just as is that kind of fits into that box of permission to flourish. But yeah, that's, you know, kind of that having that authentic feeling that I can just do truly what I desire regardless of what everyone else is around me is doing is such a it's such a difficult thing, but so, so powerful for sure. It definitely has a congruence in my life for sure.
I love that you're allowing yourself that permission to say no because, as we know, no is a complete sentence, and we all learn that in different times in our lives.
Yeah.
So for
Yeah, I mean,
you,
for me,
uh-huh, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, what I really learned the hard way is you can only put energy into one thing at a time, right? So if you're putting into something that you're doing people pleasing, then you're not putting it into what you truly desire, right? And then you just end up being resentful, living in shame, and it's like all these cycles that just spiral out of control. So like learning that you can really only put your energy, your time, your focus into one thing at a time, and it better be what you really want, right? Because that's really at the end of the day what's gonna do it for us for sure. So I just wanted to add that in.
No, that's awesome because, they talk about the power of one thing, just like
Yeah.
you shared at a time. I know I used to pride myself on being a multitasker, and I'm like, am I really getting anything done? And it's like, no. So
Yep.
I totally get what you're saying. Yeah. And I wish I had learned that earlier in life to just focus on one thing and do it one thing at a time.
Hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing about, what you went through and the three surgeries at a young age that can be so hard and difficult. What was that turning point where you realized I can't stay here anymore, like in that spot that you were in? When was that turning point for you?
Yeah, I think I remember probably 3 or 4 months after my third surgery. So it's like I had just kind of finished the official rehab, if you will, where you're going to the physical therapist 2 times a week. And I can remember waking up in my bedroom in my mom's house one day and just like my entire body just hurting, especially my lower back and hips. Because so much time walking on crutches and stuff, like the misalignment that happens, it throws everything off. Not only your obviously your knees, but your hips, your spine. So I remember waking up one morning and the surgeon told me the after he had done the surgery, the last one, he said, Chad, I had to spend the first 45 minutes of the surgery just digging out arthritis that had already built up from the second tear of the first surgery. And he basically said, my advice is to just live as least active of a life as possible, which for a type A hyperactive person, that was incredibly depressing, right? So obviously struggle with a lot of depression and like I said that I woke up that one morning where I'm like I'm literally 20 years old. I should have my whole life ahead of me, especially physically. And kind of just decided you know, to do something that's actually proactive. And it really is a blessing because I learned I had a really good reason to learn to take care of myself at a very young age, right? Obviously, that path led me to my true passion, which, it's like they say your greatest trials become your greatest gifts if you use them, and that couldn't be more true in my life. But like I look at a lot of my friends that are just now in their early 30s figuring out that they need to take care of themselves. When I went through that 10 years ago, and I'm in a much better place, physically, and I'm certainly grateful for that.
Yeah, we only have one body, right? One soul, one everything. And we're never
Yeah.
promised tomorrow. So we got to make the best of it. So powerful.
Amen.
So, how did your relationship with yourself change as you began to, rise and take care of Chad?
Yeah. I mean, in every way imaginable, you know. I was a very emotionally attached person, right? Like I would literally every little situation and instance that I was in, I would sink my emotional fangs into it, right? And obviously when that happens, you're very reactive. You're stressed out all the time because your body is constantly, suppressing and building up all of this, excess emotion that it really doesn't need. And when I really first started practicing yoga and meditation, and breath work daily, I just remember instances like where at work where like a situation that would really, I worked in construction, so you end up in a lot of situations a lot of time. It's just problem after problem, especially, I was in management and sales, so that's basically all you do is put out fires all day, and just the ability to, observe the situation without the need to lunge for it, emotionally and energetically and being attached to it. It just made me a whole new person. I used to call my mind the great extrapolator because it would just any little thing. If I liked a girl in middle school, high school, I would start thinking about the life that we'd have together. I'd see us getting married, all of it, right? And then obviously when it come to interact with the girl, I'd be very awkward and weird. And it was like that with everything, right? Every little meeting, everything that was going to happen. I would just, my mind would just race uncontrollably, often thinking about not so great outcomes, right? Oh, everyone's going to hate this. No one's going to like it. Da 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 da. And, over time, you learn that a lot of those things don't come true, and then B, you kind of develop tools to kind of rein yourself in. It's like they say when you practice, especially these meditative practices, you can create some space from your thoughts and your emotions. And until that's something that you've experienced, you hear that and you're kind of like, what? But it's you don't feel that like you're so attached. It's like being able to observe things without that kind of attachment is was life changing for me for sure.
And you were sharing earlier that you're a people pleaser. And how did you set those boundaries, for where you are
Oh,
today?
yeah. I think I think discovering the biggest thing that helped me was discovering my real passion and my purpose, which is in serving people with these, practices that help them, release trauma, stuck self-limiting beliefs, conditions, all those things because there's so many scenarios where, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to study this or I'm going to work on this. And then I'd get a phone call to go do something. Oh, let's go, whatever, kayak or go do this. And it was really that desire to want to do the thing that I set out to do that just made it much easier to say no, right? So for me, like really discovering my real purpose and passion, because without that, I was just kind of getting jerked all over the place. I think that was why, part of the reason why I was a people pleaser, right? Because I didn't really know. I was like, oh, well, that sounds cool. Yeah, let's do that. Like, I can't think of any reason why not, but when you have something better to do with your time and energy that really lights your fire, like it makes it much easier for me anyway.
And I like that you brought up time because time, we hear it so often. Time is something we can never get back, but do we really do something about it? Or when we're at, something critical happens, then we want to pivot and make those decisions.
Hmm.
How do you now define success differently than you once did back then?
Mm. That's something that I'm still learning for sure. So I literally, obviously, I went from growing up in construction where everything is based off of what you build with your hands. You work a day, you can look at the end of that day and see what you physically built and feel that, fulfillment, that sense of accomplishment from that. But moving into things where, I'm guiding people through practices, through programs, you can't physically see a tangible result, right? So I think, I was so attached to, if I do a breathwork session, I'd be attached to how many people were going to show up. And if that many people didn't show up, then it would be a disappointment no matter what, even though the people that were there had profound experiences, right? So kind of learning that, success can be so many different things, right? And it's really based off of what matters to us. And that's really where programming and conditioning, because I was conditioned to see success and fulfillment as, again, what you physically build with your hands. If I can't physically touch it, if it's not tangible, it doesn't really have any frame of reference for me, right? So it took me 3-ish years to really be able to break through that, where I was often, most days I was so lost I didn't know what to do with myself. Building out my own schedule and stuff was so difficult. But over time you slowly start to kind of learn to have a new frame of reference for what success means, if that makes sense.
And I love that because it was the consistency. You didn't give up. It took 3 years. Some people can do it faster, some take longer. It's just that
Yeah.
consistency, and that's just so important,
Yeah.
especially if we want to change habits, get better life. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Tiny
so good.
steps.
Absolutely. In what ways are you living more aligned or peaceful within yourself, as you're sharing?
Mm. More aligned and peaceful. Yeah, so there's still that there's still that voice, if you will, that's like, oh, well, this wasn't good enough, or oh, how did you only get this much done today? But around me, I keep like testimonials of, cards that people give me after a breathwork session that they send me, or testimonials that they write me. Um, And just seeing those, it can bring me out of that, right? It reminds me really of what matters and what's important, right? And I'd say that's the biggest thing for me for sure.
And for someone that's listening who, feels stuck, right? They're in their own woulda, coulda, shouldas, almost stop me moments. What would you want them to hear from you right now? What advice could you give
Hmm.
them?
Yeah, I'd say always the first thing is that, we don't choose the programs that are and the conditions that our body absorbs through our past experience. We didn't choose our parents, we didn't choose our upbringing, right? So the things that keep us stuck, we often look at it as a lack of willpower, a lack of dedication, a lack of hard work, right? It's I'm stuck because I'm lazy. I'm stuck because I'm not motivated consistently enough. But at the end of the day, if we're stuck somewhere, that's where our nervous system feels safe, right? And that box of safety, if you will, is based off of our past experience, right? That's the frame of reference that our nervous system used for safety. So it's like when you have that idea for that thing that you really want, you feel that burning in your belly to go after it, and you take that step and you feel that fear, right? That's your nervous system telling you, this is unknown. I don't know if this is safe. Maybe we shouldn't go do that. Let's come back to this place of safety, right? And that's really a survival mechanism. That's been developed over thousands of years. That's what kept our ancestors safe, when they were walking through the jungle and came across some strange cave. And, curiosity would say, oh, let's go see what's in this cave. But our nervous system developed this internal alarm that says that cave's unfamiliar. We don't know what's that. It's potentially dangerous, right? And we still have that same system active today, right? So, and the reason I'm saying that is it's for me, especially, it was so easy to get stuck in cycles of shame, right? When I was a project manager working for my family's contracting business, miserable looking at the news, seeing all the things going on, all the places that I'd be like, I could make a difference here. I could do something. But I just felt that stuck feeling. I lived in a lot of shame, right? And it wasn't until I realized that that wasn't really up to me, right? What was familiar wasn't my choice. It's not my fault. It's my responsibility what I do with it now, right? And it's truly a process. I believe that we're never healed, but we're always healing, right? It's like peeling back one layer of the onion at a time. There's always another layer of conditioning, of fear, of doubt. Um, and at some point, you do have to kind of take that step, like both of our mentor, Paul Martinelli, says, step off the cliff and build your wings on the way down. Do it afraid. You do have to do it. You do have to do that at some point, right? But I think remembering that, the things that we get stuck in, we didn't decide this. It's not ours. And that for me relieved a lot of the power that those conditions and programs had over me.
It's funny that you say that because as you were talking, I was like, I'm that person that just keep going. And I'm like, I'm going to stay on the side of the cliff. Hold on, not ready yet. Kind of going down like a rock climber.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, just go. It's
Hmm.
okay. It'll be
Yeah.
fine. So I would like to ask you to just complete this sentence. I give myself permission to flourish when I finally decided to.
Mhm. I think feel when I allowed myself to feel, right? Because for so long, again, growing up in an environment where there was no mechanism for releasing what I felt, right? So I developed a nervous system that said it must not be okay to feel, it must not be safe to feel. So naturally, I would cope and I would numb. And when you live like that for so long, you numb yourself to everything, the good and the bad, right? So for me, allowing myself to feel every moment, the joy and also the discomfort and the pain, right? Like that's when I allowed myself to do that and feel the full spectrum of everything, like that's when I can really live and flourish and find abundance.
I love that feel. I feel like you and I have a lot of similarities on our journey and where we are in the healing, especially the feeling part. Like it took me a long time
Mm,
to open up and to feel and to say things
yeah,
about feelings because it's one of those things you feel very vulnerable and it's, when you're growing up and it's just the environment that you're in.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Chad, where can listeners connect with you or continue to have conversations with you?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm on the social media platforms, most of them anyway. So on Instagram, it's Chad B, Chad as in dog B Carpenter, Chad B Carpenter. My Facebook is just Chad Carpenter. On my Instagram, I have resources like a nighttime practice if you struggle going to sleep, falling asleep or staying asleep. I have a great 15-minute kind of breathwork body scan visualization. There's also a link for support calls if you're just curious about the work I do and want to, share more about your experience and kind of see, what ways I can support you on your journey. There's a link for that there as well. I also have a website that just talks all about the breathwork practice in general. It's called quantumbreath.co. No M at the end. .com was taken, so I had to stick with .co. Maybe one of these days I'm gonna buy .com from whoever owns it. I'm gonna
Yes,
make that a goal. I'm gonna make that a year goal.
I love that. I love that. That's
Yeah,
so good.
yeah.
And Chad, this has been so amazing to like just sit down and have conversations. And like I shared with Chad earlier, it's so weird to be on this side because usually I'm getting my pillow and I'm relaxing and I'm getting ready to meditate and just go into deep thought with Chad. And it's like to interview you is such an honor. So thank you
Oh,
so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate you, my friend. And uh, I look forward to all the wonderful things you'll be doing in 2026.
So
Mm.
before we leave, what is on the horizon for you for 2026?
Yeah, for sure. So I've kind of really stepped into using this somatic breathwork practice, which I've been talking about, as a deeper mechanism or vehicle for deeper change, right? Because the breathwork practice brings up a lot of emotion, trauma, fears, doubts, conditions, all these things, but it's then we have to do something with them, right? Like we have to be able to have the awareness of it, be able to recognize it, make that shift. It's kind of a daily practice, right? To really create those deeper layers of change. And my niche passion, if you will, has become supporting and guiding people through that process. So I have a 90-day breathwork coaching program that I just launched. I'm also launching a 30-day, which is more of like an entry level, like where anyone can get started, where I'll kind of teach the basics of how the nervous system operates, how your breath influences your biochemistry, which influences your entire experience, and kind of sharing more tools and stuff there. So hopefully over the next month or so I'll have that launch. So that's kind of been my main focus.
I need it. I just love it. I appreciate you so much.
Of
All
course, my
right.
pleasure.
So
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much for
much,
having
Chad.
me. Absolutely.
Mahalo, and thank you so much for tuning into Permission to Flourish. If today's conversation spoke to you, please leave a review and share it with a friend who needs a reminder that they too are allowed to share and thrive. Visit permissiontoflourish.com if you're ready to share your own story or explore our publishing opportunities. You'll also find free resources and inspiration to help you say yes to your own flourishing journey. Until next time, keep flourishing.